We are continuing to study Surah Al-Mulk with Dr. Yamina. And we had homework from last class, if I recall correctly. We were supposed to reflect on how we are part of his mulk, his sovereignty, his life we live.
On our mortality.
Yeah, maybe I'll just turn it over to you, Dr. Yamina.
Okay, thank you, Isra. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. So this is our second week in our journey with Surah Al-Mulk. If you remember last week, we went through the first ayah, which was تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير, meaning blessed, but you remember Tabaraka has much more meaning than just blessed, is he who, in whose hands rests all sovereignty, all control, all mulk, and he is all powerful over all things. And the second ayah, which I mentioned at the end of the session last week, is الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور. He who has created death and life so that he may try you as to which of you is best in deeds, and he is the Almighty, the Forgiving, the All-Forgiving. And so last week we reflected on the message of the first ayah, and particularly for me, what remained with me for the whole week is the good news conveyed with the beginning of the ayah, that first expression, Tabaraka. And we saw how the term Tabaraka refers both to increasing abundance that's also enduring and permanent. So Baraka means abundant blessings that are long-lasting. This is very important because blessings and being an abundance of blessings on their own is not enough. We want them to be renewed, increase continuously, and be long-lasting. And accordingly, Tabaraka means that God is abundant in good. He is the source of all barakah, meaning that all barakah proceeds from him alone. So he's the one who puts the barakah in what he creates. Tabaraka alladhi biyadihi al-mulk. Tabaraka, the one in whose hands rests all mulk, all sovereignty, all property, all dominion. And so the source of all barakah is the one in whose hands rests the mulk, the sovereignty, the kingdom, the dominion, the ownership. And we also noted how there is no mention of the name of God, Allah, at the beginning. It doesn't say Tabarakallah, and we saw how Tabarakallahu, Tabarakallahu ahsan al-khaliqeen is usually mentioned after God has already been described. Here, because it starts with Tabaraka, the ayah starts with Tabaraka. So we are not told Tabarakallah, but there is a description who Allah is, who our Rabb is. And a description of his qualities that guide us to look at the mulk, to look at the creation and witness and testify and eventually, inshallah, confirm the source of barakah, and therefore truly witness and truly declare Tabaraka alladhi biyadihi al-mulk. So Tabaraka alladhi biyadihi al-mulk becomes a reality for us, and it is packed with the good news of barakah. We also saw how the steps in the ayah, how it was guiding us. We said all the sovereignty and dominion, the mulk, belongs to God alone, because he alone has power and control over all things. And how do we know that? How can we verify that? Well, look around carefully, reflect on the creation, and you'll see how all things reflect power, and they indicate one single source of power. And in particular, in this surah, we saw last week at the very end that we are invited to reflect on the creation of death and life. And so I had asked you to reflect on mortality, on our own mortality. And if you would like to share, it'll be nice if we hear some of your reflections. I'll share mine, but would like to hear from you first, inshallah. Anyone?
I think for me, this being under his sovereignty, being part of his mulk, I reflected on it, or rather it came to my mind at certain points in this past week, especially in situations where I felt something that happened that I wasn't expecting, and remembering that I am part of his mulk, and sovereignty doesn't belong to me, and I belong to him, and that I don't control things. That was something good to reflect on, and I think I even felt it was more surrendering, not surrendering, maybe the word relaxing, I must say.
Comforting, maybe?
Consoling?
Comforting?
Comforting, yeah, comforting. Because I think many times there is this hidden assumption that I work with, that if the things don't go the way I want them to go, or things appear out of control, that something deeply inherently unsafe is happening. But to recognize that, yes, maybe this isn't something I wasn't hoping for, it happened now, or just simply out of the blue, and to remember that I am part of his mulk and I don't run this show. It was actually comforting, and also sobering / comforting. Initially you think you control things, but then to remember that I am part of his mulk was good. Yeah. And mortality, it came to my mind on and off this week. It definitely changes the way, or has the potential to change the way I look at things around me. Definitely things shift in terms of priority, or the way I respond to things does change when I realize that I'm just a transient passenger here, a guest here. I'm moving. It's not my end here. My end purpose is not here. I'm a traveler here. That really also gives perspective, I felt. Anyone else who wants to share? If you were able to reflect on the first two verses of Surah Al-Mulk, Surah 67, as homework from last week.
Assalamu alaikum, sisters.
Alaikum salam.
Alhamdulillah. I didn't get to catch up yet on the audio from last week, but just from hearing this conversation right now and being able to tune in, it's interesting that this, subhanAllah, like the concept of death is mentioned before being able to appreciate life. And what just occurred to me as I'm like listening to your reflections is two events that just happened before halaqah. That was like looking at a flower that I have in the house that was dying, and my immediate response was like, no, let me fix it. Like, oh no, like let me maybe cut it. And we're in the process of moving, so like the end of this apartment lease, the end of this staying, the end of this being here. And I mean, I also attended a janaza this weekend, but I think, you know, for me, even if it wasn't for the actual remembrance of someone dying, just the constant fact that everything is always changing. So the apartment affected me more than the, you know, the older person passing away, or like the flower, you know, something ending that I wasn't expecting all of a sudden, like, leads to some sort of fluctuation. And it was just so beautiful to hear you guys bring it back, Sister Isra, your reflection just now on how we are part of his mulk. So immediately that offers like a comfort, like a blanket of comfort of like, oh yeah, there's nothing to worry about with this passing if I remember that everything within this living experience is part of his mulk and it's not separate. So, I mean, starting from the second ayah and then, you know, feeling the discomfort of that mention of death and change and sudden, you know, sudden loss of something. And then remembering the first ayah just really offered something very comforting.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Sarah. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. So if you're not, no one is, you can always, if something comes to your mind and you want to share, you can always stop me and share it, inshallah. We all appreciate your input. So I'll share my reflection.
There is actually a text also, but I can read later.
Okay, go ahead and read it now.
It's from Tesnia. Do you think you can talk? Would you rather talk? That might be better. Okay, not possible to talk. Okay. She says, I completely can relate to you, Sister Sarah. I have plants in my patio garden, and maybe because of the cold weather, the plants are starting to die, and I had the same reaction. Like maybe I can water the plants more or change the soil, but then remembering that it's all part of the cycle and helps you appreciate the whole cycle. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'll share my reflection. First, this passing week, I find myself repeating these two ayat a lot, especially sometimes just the first one. تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور. Blessed is he in whose hands rests all mulk, all sovereignty, and he is all powerful over all things. He who has created death and life so that he may try you as to which of you is best in deeds, and he is the Almighty, the all-forgiving. And eventually I had what I'd call a breakthrough, maybe something I knew, but I felt it and experienced it in a new way. I realized that often when we think of God's power, because here the first ayah ends with, if he has the mulk because he huwa ala kulli shayin qadir, he is powerful over all things. So when we think of God's power and his sovereignty, we think of life and of life only. It doesn't come to our mind to include death. Somehow it is as if we don't say it explicitly, we don't think it, but the feeling, the perception, the experience of life is as though death is not within his control, as if death is not within his mulk, his sovereignty. Maybe you've heard people saying that they're not afraid of death because once life is over, that's it. It's the end. Everything is over. There'll be nothing. And if there is nothing, then the implication is that it is not within God's sovereignty, or at least that's how it feels. And so people who say that, they don't believe in God, or maybe they don't believe in the hereafter. And we say, oh, how can they say that? But like, somehow the reality of death is not always, or for some people maybe it's never part of our life experience. And it seems so far away, like death is when I die one day in the very far future, like in emotionally, it's I am not relating to it. It's not part of my reality. And this feeling is based on unquestioned beliefs about what death is. And this is not only how unbelievers see it, this is also the illusion of the believers when we live in ghafla. Somehow it seems like that, like death is only the cessation, the extinction of life. So it seems that, or it feels like, death pertains to non-existence. And if this is the case, then how can something in existence be under the control of God? So these are all unspoken, unarticulated feelings that we are not even aware of, but they are our the software that makes us perceive life and act in a certain way and be in a certain way. And unless we question these underlying assumptions about death, we will live as though death is a no God's land. You know, we say no man's land. Somehow death feels like a no God's land, where somehow people can escape. Somehow they are away from God's sovereignty. And so no wonder we find it so easy to get back into ghafla again and again, when the whole world, all beings, our own being, our own breathing even, testify that تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير. We go through the reflection. We did, for instance, reflect in many times on how water, with its lifelessness, with its lack of knowledge and seeing and power, yet life is given through it. So that water is the throne to the divine names, al-Asma al-Husna. It is an ayah, a sign that it is the mulk of God, that it is pointing to that sole source of power and knowledge and giving of life. And we learn this and we practice it, and we are at awe at what we witness and what we experience. Especially, like, for me, the breathing is really something amazing, because we breathe in and then we breathe out. So if we stop and reflect on the meaning of both of them, it's the cycle is a sign to something beyond, to the power, to the giver of life, to the dealer of death. Yet, very quickly, we find ourselves back in that realm of ghafla, because somehow there is something that we are holding on to that seems to be outside the realm of the sovereignty of God, not because we confirmed it, but because of the opposite, because we didn't confirm the opposite, that death also is the mulk Allah. It is his mulk, his sovereignty. And this reminded me of a passage in the Quran that I always I refer to quite often, because it's very, very powerful and very meaningful. So it's talking about describing the day of the judgment, but what's going on is something that we can confirm here and now, because it's something that we live at a certain, not at an intense level as in the day of judgment when everything is clear, but at different degrees in this life, to the degree that we are aware of what's going on, that we become mindful of how we are responding to the world, who we are, what we're doing here. And it's in this passage is in Surah Al-Qiyamah, which is Surah 75, and it's from ayah 10 to 15. And we're told there, يقول الإنسان يومئذ أين المفر كلا لا وزر إلى ربك يومئذ المستقر ينبأ الإنسان يومئذ بما قدم وأخر بل الإنسان على نفسه بصيرة ولو ألقى معاذيره. On that day, human being will exclaim, where is the escape? But this is something that we do. We escape in this world. We tend, that's what ghafla is about. We're escaping from the reality. If we knew the truth and the beauty of the reality, we would not try to escape it. We will actually try to stay in it. But foolishly, human being can be ignorant and foolish when we don't have the hikmah. And say, so on that day, human being will exclaim, where is the escape? Ayn al-mafar. Truly there is no refuge. Kalla la wazar. With your sustainer on that day is the journey's end. These are all things that we need to confirm and witness here and now, that there is only one end, and it is with our Rabb. The beginning and the end is with him. Life, death and life is with him. So on that day, humans shall be informed of that which has been sent, he has sent forth, and of that which he has left behind. Indeed, human being shall be himself a testimony against himself, despite all the excuses he may proffer. بل الإنسان على نفسه بصيرة ولو ألقى معاذيره. And this is telling us that deep down we all know, if we but pause and question what's going on, instead of putting things under the rug and just carrying on with our life as if everything is okay, as if we don't want to really dwell on the meaning of death, for instance. For us Muslims, believers, we say, yes, death is from God, alhamdulillah, astaghfirullah, and okay, pass. Yeah, okay, that's all correct, but have we confirmed the meaning of those words? Do we know what we're saying? That message, this message is not sent to us to repeat only, but to be a reminder, to be guidance, to be a lived guidance, to testify shahada, as I keep repeating, to remind myself primarily. Testimony and shahada is the key to everything. Otherwise, what I repeat, if I'm not confirming it, if I have not testified anything, I'm not confirming it, I cannot truly surrender. It's not my reality. I'm just parroting things. It's a kind of perjury. Astaghfirullah. So unless we testify and confirm and surrender to the reality of الذي خلق الموت والحياة, he who has created death as well as life, we will not be able to confirm the truth and the reality of the message of the first ayah, because the first ayah is saying this is the evidence that God is powerful over all things. See, it is he who has created death as well as life. So in ayah 2, we're reminded that like life, death is also created, and therefore it is also under God's sovereignty. It is also his mulk. It is also under his dominion. And this is great, great news. It is comforting news. It is news for safety. We are safe in this life and in death. But it is great news, good news for the believers who are seeking to live with surrender, with Islam, with surrendering and submitting to the divine will, instead of playing small rub, as though life was ours to do whatever we liked with it, whatever we want to do with it, which is, we have been given that freedom, but that path leads to not only not being safe, but we have no clue what we're doing. So we'll end up with no barakah, no continuity, no permanence. And so this is great news, the fact that death is also created, it is also under the dominion of God, is great news, good news for the believers who consciously and intentionally seek to live with ihsan, meaning to live in the presence of God. It is not good news for the mindless, the fools who are trying to escape God's rububiyyah because they don't realize what it means. They don't realize that we are in need of God sustaining us in life and providing for all our needs. This is what God's rububiyyah means. This is what God, everything, the sovereignty belongs to God. Mulk is His. We are His mulk. I am His mulk because I have not control over anything going on within me. I am only watching and observing and marveling. And so when we are not aware of this reality, it seems like we are not aware, because that's the mark of mindlessness, is that we don't act mindfully. So mindlessly, we are trying to claim our own little ego as achievement, our own little egos, like I am something, this is mine, this is my domain. It doesn't have to be something physical, it could be knowledge, it could be whatever, something unpalpable, beauty, knowledge, whatever it is, and physical as well. So trying to steal as though a small part of mulk from God's mulk and claim it to ourselves. And because we are so attached to that claim, because we imagine it to be who we are, we imagine that this is our identity, and without that identity, as if we are nothing, because we never reflected on who we truly are. And so in order to claim, which is an illusion, a lie, a delusion, we have to, if it's mine, it can't be at the same time God's. So I prefer to close my eyes to the reality and escape the reality that everything is under God's sovereignty. But the fact is that we are His mulk, we are His ibad, meaning we are benefiting from His rububiyyah here and now. We are in need of God sustaining us in life, providing for us. And this also is a sign that whether we acknowledge it or not, the reality is this is who we are. So just by not acknowledging this reality, that we are totally and completely dependent on He's creating, He's sustaining, and He's providing always, all the time, here and now, meaning we are 100% His mulk. Just because we don't acknowledge this reality, nothing changes. So we remain in our little bubble of self-deception and, as the Quran calls it, lies and illusion. And so when we hear the news that God is Malik al-Mulk, He is the sole owner of all sovereignty, instead of comforting us, instead of feeling safe under His sovereignty, we feel threatened. Part of us feels threatened, and at the first opportunity tries to run away, escape from that reality, and goes back into ghafla mode. And that's why we, instead of striving to remain in the presence of the divine more and more, we find ourselves, how do you say, drifting into ghafla without even realizing. So how did I come here? So the mindful muhsin they rejoice as this reality. And so for them, the reminder that God creates death as well as life is healing good news. It's comforting. It's a token, a harbinger of mercy, of joy. As remember last week, I had mentioned the ayah in Surah Al-Anfal. It's actually the second ayah in Surah Al-Anfal, Surah 8, when we are told, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُم وَإِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُهُ زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا وَعَلَى رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ. The believers are only those whose heart tremble with awe when God is mentioned. And when his ayat are conveyed unto them, the true believers, they increase in iman. The ayat increase them in iman. And they trust, they make tawakkul on their Rabb, because they know him. So, inshallah, will be if we have worked on our iman, when our iman is based on testimony and confirmation, otherwise it's not iman, it's just claim, then when we hear an ayah like this, inshallah, it will increase our iman. And the more it increases our iman, the more we will be able, we will find ourselves trusting. It's not like I'll make an effort, I don't want to trust, but what can I do? No, I will find myself in that state of trusting my Rabb, because I become more and more aware of the reality that everything is his mulk, and the first evidence is me being a mulk, and I will start seeing everything in the mirror of the eye. If I am a mulk, they are mulk. So Ayah 2 starts with الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةِ, he who has created death as well as life. And since death is said to have been created, so it's clearly, it cannot be identical with non-existence, as we tend to assume when we never stop and think about it. And so with some reflections on what's going on around us, we start testifying, or we can testify, inshallah, that death has a reality of its own. It is also created, and it is also mulk. And so many commentators on this ayah mentioned that these expressions connotes, for instance, the inanimate state of existence preceding the emergence of life in living beings. So before they are like dead, and then they are given life. And also the state of transition from life as we know it in this world to the realm of akhirah. For me, when I read this, immediately what came to my mind, and I went and read that again, and I'm sharing it, inshallah, with you. Imam Badi'u Zaman Sa'id Nursi, rahimahullah, he was asked a question based on this ayah, on Surah Al-Mulk's second ayah. And he was asked, isn't death the non-existence of life? Why is it said in the Quran that death is created? So Imam Nursi says, to his answer, it's much longer, so I'm only going to quote just a little beginning, inshallah. He says, death is a discharge from the duties of life. It is rest, a change of residence, a transformation of existence. It is an invitation to eternal life, a beginning, the introduction to an immortal life. Now, what comes after attracted my attention. Just as life comes into the world through an act of creation, and it is appointed and determined, so departure from the world is created and determined, and it is planned wisely and purposefully. The ways he gives, for instance, he starts with plants, so I'll only give the example of the plants. The way plants die, he says, plant life being the simplest level of life, show that their death is a more orderly work of art than life. Sarah and Tesnia gave also the example of death, and I have here in front of me a vase with the flowers that a friend just brought. Was it on? Yeah, on Saturday evening, and they are still looking beautiful and alive. Tabarakallah, ahsan al-khaliqeen. But the leaves are wilting. There's some yellow. The leaves are not as green, and they are wilting. So they are giving signs that we are departing. So you see, death doesn't happen suddenly. Life is not here and it's death. No, something is going on, he says. So the way plants die show that their death is a more orderly work of art than life. For although the death of fruits, seeds, and grains appear to occur through their decay and dissolution, it is in fact a sort of kneading that comprises exceedingly well-ordered chemical reactions and a balanced combining of elements and wise formation of particles. Their unseen, orderly, and wise death appear through the life of the new shoot. So you see, when things start, the rotting and the decay of things doesn't just happen like that. There is something being created, something that's following laws, something that's following lots of laws of chemistry, lots of things are going on. It is an activity of rububiyyah, it is an activity that is created, that comes together with the manifestation of death. And so he goes on, and then he says, since death is like life itself, like it needs to be to have something to be created in order for life to happen, to occur, then it is created and it is regular the same way, it is regulated the same way as life is. Just life is sustained for longer time, so we take it for granted and we think life is there sitting, but life is also sustained. It does not, but death usually, all the processes that occur for death to occur usually is more impermanent, shorter lived. And so he goes on saying that if the death of plant life is created with wisdom and order in this way, then of course the death that befalls human life, which is the highest level of life, must also be created, wise and ordered as well from the same source. So, and this gives us a little more clues to start looking around us, especially with plants now. Whatever we do, it's not about watering them, it's the season, it's their time, it's their ajal. It's their time to leave this world, and you'll see that it happens slowly. There is wilting, something is going on, they become, the green turns yellow, you can see with the leaves falling now. Something is going on. Death is not happening on its own. It's not just a lack of life. It's not just a non-existence of life. There is, it comes together with lots of orderly, very intricate, subtle processes. And so we can, inshallah, reflect. Fall is a time to reflect on the reality of death and how death is created, just like life. And the more we're convinced of this reality, the more our ego, inshallah, won't be able to trick us into feeling as though death was beyond God's control, beyond God's mulk. And for the human heart, for the human ruh, for the qalb and ruh, for the heart and the spirit or the soul, this is like the greatest news. You can relax now and trust God and truly appreciate this life as the harbinger to akhirah. And then we can be truly and sincerely grateful, because otherwise we can never really appreciate this life, because it's always tainted with that unspoken fear, anxiety of it's ending, it's going to end, and we don't even know when it's going to end, which exasperates our anxiety. So now we can relax and we can truly appreciate life, and we can sincerely then be grateful to God alone. And so we won't look for ways to leave his presence and take refuge as though, astaghfirullah, in ghafla. We will look for ways to the contrary, like we will wait for ways to take refuge in his mercy, to remain in his beautiful, quieting, healing presence. And so we can now, inshallah, appreciate why death is mentioned before life, in order to attract our attention to the fact that death is a blessing, it is created, it is an existential reality, therefore it is created, because it's not easy to see death from that perspective. And it's very important, at the same time, it's very important to appreciate death as being created for what it is, as being a blessing, as being created, and not what we imagine it to be. And it's important for all the reasons I just mentioned. So after this reflection, we can see how the creation of death and the precedence of death over life, the fact that death is mentioned before life in this ayah, has a profound impact on how we perceive death and life, and therefore how we live our life, and therefore on the quality of our deeds. And if you see the ayah, the second ayah, it says لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. So it is not, which means in order to test which one of you has the best deeds, the best actions. And so it's clear that it's not, what matters is not the quantity of our deeds, but their quality. They have to be hasan, they have to be good and beautiful. And they are good and beautiful to the extent that they reflect the beautiful names of God. When we act in the name of God, in his beautiful names, and the names of God are al-asma al-husna, and al-husna shares the same root as hasan and ahsan. Hasan is good, beautiful. Ahsan is the best, the most beautiful. Al-husna is the feminine of ahsan. And this is possible when we live with ihsan, and ihsan again shares the same root, hasana. And so the next, again from the beginning, because these two ayat, the more you think about them, you see how they are so intricately, beautifully interconnected, and how each expression leads to the other and points to the other, and it's like weaving. It's full of wisdom. It's so beautiful. Blessed, Tabaraka, the one in whose hand all mulk rests, and he is all powerful over all things. He who has created death as well as life in order to test which of you has the best deeds. And he is the Almighty, the All-Forgiving. And remember, here, لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ, so it's about the Bela. And we did talk about Bela just a few weeks ago in Surah Hud and in Surah Al-Kahf. And in both surahs, it was the 7th ayah that mentioned this exact same expression, لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا, in order to test which of you has the best deeds, the best action. And what is what we pointed and we reflected on that time is the in order to. So it means he has created death as well as life in order. So it's giving us a purpose, a cause, an explanation. Just to refresh our minds, Bela, the word Bela, I'm not going to go into the detail because we already did that time, but just remember that it had two implications. One, to do with knowing. So when we say Bela, it implies that learning the state, the condition of something, and becoming acquainted with what was unknown of the case before. And the first implication is related to the second one, which is making something known. So we get to know something by making it known. And the Bela is what brings it out so it becomes known. And so it also implies the manifesting of the goodness or the badness within that thing. And the Bela is what brings out what the thing is truly. Is it good? Does it have goodness or badness in it? And so we get to know. And we also noted that it is not the Bela itself that is good or bad, but the consequences of how we deal with it, how we respond to it, how we deal with it. It can be good and beneficial for us, or it can be bad and detrimental for us. And a very classical example would be health and sickness. I could have health and use it to get to know God as the healer, a shafi, and be grateful. And it becomes my a way of bringing into realizing, fulfilling my potential as abd, as to my Rabb, in different ways. Could be some people as maybe healers themselves, and it becomes my ubudiyya and ibadah, my worship. Or it could be I waste it and squander it, and that's it. It becomes, I take it for granted, and so I fail the test. And sickness is the same thing. I could use it to complain and think of myself as a victim of some sickness or some conditions, or I can use it to realize the reality of life as being impermanent and transient, as health as being a gift, because when I'm sick, somehow I don't have all the sicknesses in the world. So I have one sickness, but so many other parts of the body are healthy. And so it becomes, again, a means to appreciate life, be grateful, and get to know who our Rabb is. And at the same time, it's not like they happen at the same time. One, our ubudiyya is the mirror to rububiyyah. So the more we realize our ubudiyya, our being in need, through the need are the mirror. I realize that I am being given. I am a need, but the need is being sustained. I'm in need of being alive, of breathing, and I'm made to breathe, and I'm gifted with life. So these awareness has many different levels. What I'm sharing right now is only the beginning, and we start living life not from the ego's delusions, because in that false bubble we can't find who we are and we can't see what the world is. All perception is distorted there. We get out of the bubble. This is the means to break through that bubble, and then we start living from the heart and the soul and from who we truly are, and then we start growing, and it's like, think of it like the mi'raj of the Prophet ﷺ. But this mi'raj is the mi'raj in the heavens of the beautiful divine names. We get closer and closer to God through our ubudiyah. We become closer and closer to our Rabb, and we become more and more acquainted with the beautiful names, and all our actions, all who we are or our actions, we will start experiencing them as manifestations, embodiment of the manifestations of God's creativity, of His rububiyyah, of His beautiful divine names. And we start tasting them, we start acting in His name, not in our name. And there is a hadith Qudsi that says, when human being, like when my worshipper worships me so much, then that he's I become. So it's a Qudsi hadith, it's a sacred hadith, when God says, I become his sight with which he sees. It means the abd will realize that when I'm seeing, I'm not doing anything to see. I am made to see. And there are other also Qudsi hadiths, sacred hadiths, when, for instance, God says, I was ill and you did not visit me, and the person says, how can I come and visit you when you are Rabbul Alameen? And says, so and so was sick and you didn't visit him, and if you had, you would have found me with him. And we did study all this, the meaning of all these hadiths in the past, so I won't go through that, but just to give you an idea that this is the beginning of a journey towards God, a journey of ubudiyah, a journey of fulfilling our ubudiyah. And so we saw, when we looked at Surah Hud and Surah Al-Kahf, the beginning of these surahs, we saw how the purpose of creation is connected with the purpose of the creation of the heavens and earth. The world is connected with the purpose of our creation, the creation of human beings. And we saw how human beings are created to fulfill their potentialities through this bala. And that's only possible to the extent that they are mindful of their true destination, which is akhirah, which is their return unto God. And when they are mindful of their true destination, then they can realize how much they need divine guidance and how much they need to surrender and follow and live according to the divine will. And that is ahsanu amala. That's then whatever they do is beautiful, because it is inspired through and guided with divine guidance. Because anything else, anything that is limited to this worldly life, is bound to perish. The world is impermanent, our life is impermanent, everything around us is bound to perish, except what looks to akhirah, what looks to wajh Allah, what looks to the beautiful, his beautiful divine names. And if you remember in Surah Hud, in Ayah 7, we were told, and He it is, meaning God, وَهُوَ الَّذِي, He it is who has created the heavens and the earth in 6 ayahs, and the throne of His Almightiness has rested upon water, in order to, exactly like here in Surah Al-Mulk, in order to test you, which of you is best in deeds. For thus it is, if you say, behold, you shall be raised after death, the disbelievers are sure to answer, this is clearly nothing but delusion. In fact, it is they're saying that what the Prophet is teaching them is delusion when they themselves are self-deluded, but they're not aware. What is important here is we saw that God has created the heavens, the earth, everything in order to test you. And so we understood this test, this bala, as an opportunity for us to fulfill the purpose of our creation. And this is important because we can only find lasting joy and fulfillment when we fulfill the purpose of creation. The purpose of the creation, the purpose of our creation are one and the same, we are told here. Everything is created for us to fulfill the purpose of our creation. Subhanallah. Can you see how human being, like we spend our life on a daily basis, day in, day out, as though it has no meaning, no purpose, no value. But this ayah, if you stop and think about it, can you imagine the value of human beings? The whole created, the heavens and earth is created in order to test us. Subhanallah. It's like mind-blowing. Like you just feel at awe of like, am I getting it right? And it takes a while, of course, not only to understand it intellectually, but to digest it so that we start feeling it, appreciate what it means, really. What are the implications of this statement? And again, once we start appreciating this reality, then how we respond to things is going to change. And that's what makes us benefit from the bala or not. Because remember, it is not the bala, what happens to us, around us, or whatever, is not itself good or bad. Our response to it is, so it's not the content of the bala, but our response to it that makes the difference. And our response is the result of our perception of what's going on, which is the subject, the topic of the bala, and all life is the topic of our bala. And each one of us has his own perception, his own angle of perception, but that perception has to be, we have to get rid of the bubble of self-delusion of the ego and see things for what they are. And
Dr. Yamina, this is very, very interesting that heavens and the earth and human being tested. I never thought of it that way, but the verse is actually saying that, right? The one who.
Oh yes, very explicitly.
yeah. This is, and the common view or the popular view, or a common view, is that we're so tiny, minuscule on this earth or within this universe that really
physically, yes.
Coming back to it, that no, it does matter.
Physically, we are minuscule.
What is it?
Physically, we are tiny, but the aim, the purpose, the meaning of our creation is huge.
Yeah,
it engulfs all the creation of the heavens and the earth. God says, I created them all for you.
Mm-hmm.
Subhanallah.
Yeah, and one metaphor comes to my mind is the metaphor of shooting a movie, good movies with proper budgets, there's a lot of money spent on setting the stage, right? And the character cannot say, I'm just tiny, one little detail,
While you're bothering with
set.
all these things.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of money spent on this, on that. And me speaking or not speaking, this is just a tiny part of the whole preparation, from the dressing and the, staging the whole thing.
There may be other.
Nature, it will be outside. The whole house is prepared, just for you to say, something. Well, my part is minuscule. No, the whole thing is set up so that you will play your part.
There may be other purposes, but as far as we're concerned, it is created for us.
And it's significant.
Yeah, very, very significant. And so that's why it is repeated again and again and again in the Quran, that we need to learn to perceive things as they truly are, which are ayat. They are signs from our Rabb, and talking about our Rabb, bringing messages from our Rabb. So it's not only they came from him, and they are also testifying, they are bringing messages about him, from him. And so it means they are created with purpose, with wisdom, with rahmah. And when we don't do this, we usually, without realizing, we live life as though things are happening, and some events somehow, sometimes happen to befall me when I don't like it. It's only then that we wake up anyway. When things are going our way, we don't ask questions, and we say, why is this going on? Why did it happen to me? So when we see things as they are, created with purpose, and that purpose is tied to the purpose of our creation, then the bala leads to growth, to getting more mindful of being abd, totally dependent on our Rabb's rububiyyah, on his care, his sustaining, his rahmah, that we are totally his mulk, under his sovereignty. And as we appreciate his rububiyyah, as we appreciate being his mulk and everything being his mulk, we become more and more grateful to our Rabb alone, and we fulfill the purpose of our creation. But if we remain unaware of the purpose of creation, not only we struggle with hardship without any ends, without any purpose, without any meaning, just seemingly, just like that, things happen to me. Some people happen to be lucky and some unlucky. And when things seem good, so it's like, we talked about it, Dan, it's not like only in times of crisis we lose something. No. Even if everything seems good, we tend to, if it's not directly connected to God, if I don't perceive it as his mulk, then, and be therefore grateful to him alone, then there is the delusion of self-accomplishment, and I become proud of myself. But at the same time, underneath that pride, there is the fear of losing it all, because deep down, I know that I have no control over it. I am not the sovereign. It just happened to me, and anytime it can leave. So if I hold onto the delusion of self-accomplishment, self-achievement, then, and it's going to feed my bubble, the ego bubble is going to get bigger, but the fear is also going to grow with it, because there is the fear of losing it all, because deep down, إن الإنسان على نفسه بصيرة ولو ألقى معاذيره. However many excuses we prefer, every human being knows the truth that we are not the sovereign. We have no control over anything. And so deep down, however whatever I achieve, because it has no true future, it's going to be in vain. There is no true lasting future, no true grounding here and now. And so anything can happen anytime, because deep down, however powerful anyone may be, they know they have no true control over life, not even over their own breathing. So the point is how we perceive the bala and how we respond to it. This means how we perceive the world, the creation, matters enormously. It's very, very important. That's why we're told in Surah Hud that God has created the heavens and the earth in order to test you. And in Surah Al-Kahf it was إِنَّ جَعَلْنَا مَا عَلَى الْأَرْضِ زِينَةً لَهَا لِنَبْلُوَهُمْ أَيُّهُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. Surely we made whatsoever is on earth an adornment for it, for the earth. Why? Why should it be all adorned and beautified? In order to test which of you are best in deeds. So the world, we talked about how the world has been adorned and made beautiful, not just for us to enjoy it aimlessly or for any, it is, again, it has a purpose. And one of the purposes in this ayah we are told, it is for the bala, to test us, to bring what's in us, to give us the opportunity to fulfill our potential, our purpose in life. And we also talked about, like usually we say, the purpose is to realize that they are ayat. Yes, but we can only fulfill our potential when we realize that they are ayat. That's what it means. The ayat is for me. They are bringing a message for me. So it's another perspective on saying everything is an ayah. What does it mean that they are an ayah? Because somehow it may seem like they are an ayah, okay, bye, has nothing to do with me. This لِيَبْلُكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا or أَيُّهُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا, this expression, this ayah is telling us it's totally to do with you. Because they are ayah for you. They are bringing messages for you. The messages, the letters, they are bringing are for you to read, for you. They are bringing because those messages are guidance for you. What do you mean? They are ayah, and now I am, okay, bye, now I'm living my life the way I know. Because if you truly confirm that it was an ayah, you would have to read few messages. And you will see that the messages are telling you, Yamina, this is why you were created. This is the path you need to follow. And I said, okay, if I can say, okay, nothing to do with me, I understood they are ayat, it means I didn't get it at all. And I think then someone, maybe Isra gave the example of someone receiving letters, and instead of reading the meaning, the message, and acting on it, benefiting from it, because let's say we are in danger and the message is that we are hungry, and the message is actually saying, you know what, where you are is full of food, you just press this button and it will come to you. But I'm saying it's an ayah, what is it to me? And I'm collecting letters but never reading them. I am not, it is not an ayah for me, it's a claim I'm making. If it is an ayah for me, I'll have to read it, understand it, live by it, experience it, go. If it says go, I'll go. I don't say, oh, it says go, put it back where it was. No. And eventually, anyways, the ayahs they all disappear very quickly. It's not like most of the things in life, we can't collect them, including our youth, for instance. So when we learn for them and we listen to them, we act on them, then they become ayat for us. Just claiming, that's the beginning, yes. I need to know that they are ayat, so I give them, I try to confirm if it's true or not. But just, okay, they said they are ayat. So there are steps. One is to know that they are ayat. Second is to go and confirm it, to read. Third, it says there is a button. We are in the dark and we're scared, and says, just stand up 3 steps. There will be a wall. On the wall there is a button. Just push it and there will be light. I read it, but I never stand up and never take 3 steps, and I never push the button. Have I now confirmed the message of this ayah? Not at all. I am still in the dark. It could very well be a prank or just anything. It's maybe not an ayah, not a message. I'm repeating this because this is so important, because this is so missing in among Muslims. And so that's why it makes the Quran, it remains so far from us. We don't feel the need we don't feel its relevance to our life, and therefore we don't feel the needs to prioritize it. Yes, we have to work for food, for this and that, but all those are there for on one level in the beginning to give us the opportunity to fulfill our purpose. The more we start being aware of our purpose, the more we will know how going and working and making a living is also part of my purpose, and how to see it itself is a message, itself is an ayah. So there are degrees, and it's a process, it's a journey. So when we are told that everything is an ayah, now we are told that what it means that they are an ayah from our perspective. It means that if everything is an ayah, what is it to me? It's a trial, it is a test for me, because it's an opportunity to follow the guidance of the ayah and bring out the best in me, in us, and be grateful, be patient. If we understand the meaning of things, it will become easier to be grateful, to appreciate, to be patient when things are hard, because they have a meaning and everything is passing and we are on a journey to eternity. Or I don't care, it's an ayah, and I remain in my ego's bubble of self-deception and self-delusion. And deluded people are usually ungrateful, because when they are grateful, they are not grateful to God, they're grateful to things, and it doesn't last long, because their gratitude is always conditional. Everything has to be as I want, otherwise I won't be grateful. It's very self-centered, and that's not how life is. Because we are not the sovereigns. We are not, the mulk is not ours. We are ourselves as mulk. And so ungrateful and deluded people, they live mindlessly. But we want to be mindful believers who appreciate the guidance sent through the Quran and through the ayat in the creation. And inshallah, appreciate. All of them are something to be very grateful for, and live with the certainty, the yaqeen, وَهُمْ بِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ, with the certainty of akhirah here and now. And so the ayah ends, وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْغَفُورُ. He's the Almighty, the All-Forgiving. So now we can testify and confirm that He is truly Almighty, that God is Almighty, is also, like being powerful over all things, is comforting when we live with ihsan, with the awareness that He is our Rabb, our only refuge. But it can also be intimidating. I remember times where Al-Aziz was not only Aziz, even Qadir were names that were intimidating. Because we make mistakes, we forget, we fall into ghafla. Then we are told right immediately after, there is no wow, not he is Aziz, Almighty, and Ghafur. No, he is the Mighty, the Forgiving. There's no time in between. There's nothing in between. They come together. And so we're told, like, don't worry, he's also forgiving. Like, this is like a difficult path. No, it's not. That's at the beginning, before we start, or when we are at the beginning of the journey, the ego is still there. And so the ego is telling us, but this is very difficult. You are not perfect. How about if I make a mistake? And instead of saying, even if I make a mistake, a little is better than nothing, the ego says, oh, just give it up. It's too much. And this I is saying, no. It's like the aim of the test is not for us to fail. It's not to fail us. It's an opportunity for us. It is a rahmah for us. Everything is created in a way to facilitate our fulfillment, the fulfillment of our humanity, of who we truly are as ibadallah, who is destined to live an eternal life in the presence of the divine. And so the ayah is saying, oh, no, because the ego is already starts panicking, and also panicking because the bubble is going to disappear, because that ego doesn't exist has no true existence from itself in reality. So it's panicking and wanting to hold on its lies, and says, no. Yes, you can. It's okay. You can make mistakes as long as you keep the istiqamah, you keep the destination, and you keep going back. If you make a mistake, you repent to him. And the word used, the all forgiving, the all there is because Ghafur is from Ghafara, and Ghafr is to cover sins, to cover mistakes. So he will cover your mistakes when you come back to him, when you make tawbah. And Ghafur is like, we have Jahil, ignorant, but Jahul is always, he does it a lot, he's always ignorant. Here it's an intensive form. God is continuously very forgiving, all the time forgiving. He always forgives whoever repents to him, so we can always repent and come back to him, make tawbah. His mercy encompasses everything, and he is continuously very, very forgiving, subhanallah. And so again, this shows that the test is not what we think, we assume, what the ego in the little bubble assumes. Oh, this is to fail me, to make my life difficult. Who told you that? Oh, he is Aziz and Ghafur. And even Aziz is more than just mighty and powerful. It has also the connotation of being distinguished, is Aziz, noble, venerable, precious, valuable, dear, beloved. They're all meanings contained in the word Aziz. He's the exalted, the unattainable, cherished. So Aziz denotes much more than might or mighty. Someone mighty and exalted, but also precious and cherished and beloved. So it's not only about qudra, power and might, but the perfection, the beauty. When you say izzah, it's more than qudra. It's the perfection, the beauty, the wisdom of the divine power. And so the path of the Aziz, from our perspective, we realize he's Aziz, almighty, because he is powerful over all things, because he's the source of all barakah, tabarakallah, tabarakalladhi biyadihi al-mulk, because everything is under his sovereignty, everything is his mulk, and he is the source of all barakah, all goodness, all blessings that will increase and abundant blessings that will last forever are in his hand. Then we understand at the end, we can say, yes, وَهُوَ الْعَزِيز. And he alone is the mighty, the Aziz. Aziz is much nicer than mighty, because mighty only captures one aspect of Aziz. And so all blessings, all beauty, all perfections proceed from him alone, is also part of Aziz. So, and Aziz reflects in our life when we are grateful to God alone, when we praise him alone, when we say Tabarakallah or Tabarakalladhi biyadihi al-mulk. That's a form of praising God and being grateful to him and acknowledging his being Aziz. And so whatever we do with this awareness, with this beingness, let's say, becomes worship, and we start seeking help from him alone, and we submit to him only. We will feel the need for his guidance. We won't be able to claim self-dominion like in the bubble of the self-deluded ego. We start living from the heart and from the soul, from who we truly are, not from lies. And we start the reality that we experience in our inner life. We start also reflecting, we start perceiving the world as it is. And it is an enriching cycle. The more we start seeing things as they truly are, as ayat, bearing witness to his might, to his barakah, and we start seeing that everything in creation is bear witness to the truth of these two ayahs. And the more we testify to this reality in the world, the more we will also be able to see it within ourselves, and the more we're less likely to fall into the trap of self-deception of the ego that claims a sovereignty instead of God, and that leads to the shirk that we are so much warned against, and it is the only sin that God does not forgive, because it's not like God doesn't want to forgive it. It's like we're going totally away from God's rahmah, so there is no way we can get God's rahmah. So you're saying, oh, be careful. If you go that way, you will not find forgiveness. You will not find rahmah. It means it's not. We will be depriving ourselves of the reality. The more I keep into my the lies and self-deceptions of the ego, I'm not likely to see the reality as it is. And so when we follow the divine guidance of the Quran, in this case of these two ayahs so far, then everything we start doing, first, the way we are in the world, the way our self-perception, our perception of the world, our thoughts, our feelings will all be forms of worship, of knowing God, that will increase our iman. And so our deeds will start manifesting accordingly. And even the same deeds like drinking and eating, but now we drink and eat in the name of God consciously. And so it becomes worship. It is an action that will increase our knowledge of God, our iman. It will be an opportunity to live in ihsan, to fulfill the potential, the purpose of our creation. And so the quality of our deeds will beautify, will transform into ahsan amal. And that's what the purpose of the creation here in this particular ayah was, the creation of death as well as life was. And so the Issa, which also means dignity in a way, that being valued and cherished and have dignity, but true dignity, Izza, we when we submit to Al-Aziz only, to God, to the one who's the sovereign of all mulk, the owner of everything, then we start living with the dignity, with the izzah of being Abdullah. We are his representative on earth, and we do not submit to anyone but him. And that's the izzah of worshiping God alone, of prostrating to God alone, to being grateful to God alone, to seeking help from him alone, and being aware that everything else, like seeking help, but I need the help of water, the help of food at least, the help of air. Yes, but when I am in that way of being, I'm aware that actually I found him through them, because they are the ayat. They are the one who brought me the message, the water, the air, the food, spoke to me, told me about my Rabb, that he's the Aziz. And as I drank the water, as I breathe, I again and again testify and witness that he is the Almighty, that all mulk is his, that the air belongs to him, and he alone can use it in my body to bring life through lifeless air, through lifeless water. And so there is no such a thing as the question, the false question, the question of the self-deluded ego says, oh, if I submit to God alone, what am I going to do now? I'm not going to eat and breathe? False question. Because if you really stepped out of that bubble and really interacted with things as ayat, you would have witnessed and confirmed and testified that they are testifying, they are ayat, they are telling you about their Rabb. That's the only way to know him anyways. Anything else is perjury. It is just false. It's just claims. It is not denying, but it is not Iman either. And that's where Al-Aziz reflects in our life as the dignity of being a abd to God alone, a worshipper of God alone. So we live with the dignity, with the izzah of being his ibad. And we'll be able to witness, then we will be able to witness his Ghafoor, all forgiving, very forgiving. In that path, whenever we make mistakes, despite all our mistakes, we are again and again gently guided again to the right path, given again and again opportunities to how do you say, was the bela, the test, to readjust as if to, and he's Ghafoor, he covers all those mistakes. It's like the delete button, and you start from where you were. And actually, not only you start from where you were, often you start from a higher level, because we're told that those who have make tawbah and have iman and make amal salih, good deeds, God yubaddilullahu sayyi'atahum hasanat, God will transform their bad deeds into good deeds. Means that bad deeds will become an opportunity to know. It's like day and darkness and light. We will know, oh, that was really, for instance, I saw things in the opposite of in disconnection with the Rabb, in disconnection with my Rabb, and life looked so dark, so meaningless. There was so much fear, so much anxiety. And when I make istighfar and wake up from that self-delusion, I realized I can now appreciate the joy, the peace, the fulfillment, the safety of taking refuge with God, being his abd and everything, being a messenger, an ayah from him, being his mulk. And so what was once a sayyi'ah, an evil deed, became the means that makes me appreciate the blessings more and more through its opposites, for instance. So we'll be able to witness, to experience that He is truly Al-Ghafur, the all-forgiving, the very forgiving. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم أنت ربي لا إله إلا أنت خلقتني وأنا عبدك وأنا على عهدك ووعدك ما استطعت أعوذ بك من شر ما صنعت أبوء لك بنعمتك علي وأبوء بذنبي فاغفر لي فإنه لا يغفر الذنوب إلا أنت آمين والحمد لله رب العالمين. So that was ayah 2 inshallah of Surah Al-Mulk.
Jazakumullah khair. It's 9:30, but are there any comments, questions before we close? I see a comment from almost an hour ago on the chat box about sister sharing the concept of death being so visible every day and sharing her reflection on her toddler growing and what was real a year ago is not real anymore, it's gone. That change also makes her reflect on death. And I guess it connects with death and life because as the baby who's crawling is dying, the baby who's walking coming into being, and so life and death are both created and connected in that way. Are there any other comments, questions? Sister Yamina, do we have a homework? Can you think of a homework for us?
You can read ayah 3 and 4, inshallah, and not only reflect on more than just reading the meaning, just ask a question and stay with the question all the whole week. How is this related to what we learned so far? I mean, I don't know the answer. I will also ask the question and I'll share the answer next week, inshallah.
Inshallah. Inshallah. Yeah, thank you. Jazakumullah khair.
Thank you for sharing.
May the Aziz, the Ghafur, be in our minds and hearts, inshallah. Let's meet, inshallah, next week. Jazakumullah khair. Dr. Yamina.